What's up, everyone? Boy, oh boy, do we have a show for you today. The next 30, roughly about 30, a little after 30 minutes or so, talking a lot. But the biggest news, yes, you know it, Deshaun Watson's back in the news again. But first things first, I got to introduce to you our today's guest. He is amazing, first off, an amazing podcast host. He hosts the Intercept Your Lunch podcast. Definitely follow the podcast on Twitter. We'll get that out there once this recording is concluded. But Marty is the host of the Intercept Your Lunch podcast. Marty, welcome aboard and welcome to the Air Raid Attack podcast.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Excited to be on the show, talk a little NFL, and see what you have to ask and what we have to answer together.
Yes, sir. And like I said, guys, check him out. Good stuff, and he'll never disappoint. I promise you that. But Marty, first things first is the news today. I'm sure you've heard it along with the rest of the world. Is Deshaun Watson, the rumors of him being traded to Miami sounds like it's going to happen sometime this week. I don't know. I'm trying to catch up on the details of that potential trade, but what are you hearing on your side, and what's your thoughts on this? In my opinion, this blockbuster deal.
Yeah, certainly. Being a huge Washington football team fan, I've been wrapped up in this news, and folks might ask why, but there's a potential of a three-way team deal leading to the Washington football team in this trade. I know that the Miami Dolphins have been hot after Deshaun Watson. They really love what he would bring to that offense, and I think a lot of fans down there would be happy. I think
Mhm.
that they're lukewarm on Tua, to say it, lightly, but Deshaun Watson's definitely an upgrade for them. Houston, he doesn't want to be there, so it seems to make sense. They have the draft capital to make the trade. And then, as a repercussion of that, Tua comes up north. The Washington football team potentially is that young offensive quarterback that Scott Turner is looking for.
Well, and scrolling through, of course, definitely Washington football team is the team that is definitely being mentioned out there, and of course Scott Turner. How would Tua fit that scheme? That's up in Washington, and moving forward in regards to the being the potential or probably will be the franchise quarterback for Washington.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Turner has a complicated offensive system. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick's been in the league 16, 17 years now with 10, 11 different teams. And one of his quotes, major highlighted quotes for the team this offseason was learning this offense under Scott Turner and mentioning that this was the most complicated system that he's ever been in. So that doesn't bode well, I think. Most of the times when you're too complicated, your own players tend to struggle. I think Tua would fit. It's a more of a fast pace, quick, get the ball out, let the playmakers work. I think he would thrive in that. It would just take some time, just like anything else. I think in this league, a lot of times young quarterbacks get rushed into situations
Mhm.
that don't necessarily help them. They get dumped, and then like take Ryan Tannehill for example. Struggled in Miami, had some time, got to Tennessee, and now look at that. So there's definitely possibilities for growth there. It's just a wait and see type mentality now to see if the deal actually goes through.
And of course, I had Kenny the sports guy podcast on last week. We were talking to Sean Watson, and if by chance this trade, this is way before this trade even went down, so everybody don't freak out. But if he was potentially traded, the asking price. Obviously, we don't know much details about this potential trade, but from your opinion, I mean, of course, it's just it's our own opinion that there's trade, obviously. But
Mhm.
what would you think the Deshaun Watson asking price is for that Houston's asking for in return?
I think at this point in juncture, beforehand, there was talks of three, if not four, high draft picks, including three first rounds in the second round and multiple starters. But with some of the off-field criminal activity that Deshaun was wrapped up in, that kind of seems to be resolved quietly, we'll say. I don't think, unless I've missed it, a true report coming out clearing his name of all indictments. But I think right now, if I was the Houston Texans, if I could get a package that would include 2 1s, maybe a two, and a starter on either side of the ball at this point, I think you'd have to pull the trigger because it's just going to keep getting worse in the terms of return on that investment for Deshaun Watson.
I was kind of wondering, just kind of curiosity. I think Kenny, when we were mentioning first rounds, high ends picks, I brought up the potential. Do you think Houston? I mean, obviously MVP caliber player and very young still, of course. And at this rate, do they just want to dump him for practically something in return? But obviously we don't know, and obviously they want to get something out of it, out of this thing, and of course, leading to Miami. Of course, Watson is willing to waive his no trade clause to Miami. Of course, Miami. Let's real quick on Tua. Last year's fifth overall pick in the 2020 draft. Of course, Miami goes to 1-5 after the loss this past weekend against Jacksonville in London. Obviously, Tua started 13 games, passing a little over 2,300 yards, somewhere in the ballpark of 15 touchdown passes, somewhere 15, 14, 7 interceptions, 64, I think is the last I saw, passing percentage. What went wrong, or did anything go wrong for Tua, or just was this not a good scenario for him at Miami?
I think there's multiple combinations here that led to this potential trade and early exit for Tua. If all the hypotheticals come true, I think one of the things is just support on the offensive side from Miami. If you look at last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, they had 3 healthy wide receivers
Mhm.
for that game. I mean, folks are putting resources around quarterbacks now, especially young quarterbacks, and trying to do whatever they can to help them. And it just seemed like Miami was just a step behind when it came to doing so. I know they drafted Jalen Waddle in the first round this past year. They tried with Austin Jackson in the first round last year with Tua as an offensive tackle. But it just seemed like weapon wise, they were always behind the 8 ball, or it just didn't fit what they were trying to do with Tua. I think if he was to go somewhere, they would definitely have to have weapons that would fit his mold in terms of quick, short passes, and hoping that the yak yards lead to him being successful.
It's going to be interesting. As we, literally as we speak, the behind the scenes are still going on, and I'm sure tomorrow we may know more as we approach the weekend and all that good stuff. So switching from the East Coast to the desert, Marty, the Cardinals just keep winning, and in the process, they look to get better and keep getting better, and every week in, week out. Of course, in week one, literally stopping Derrick Henry in Tennessee. What was it, week four, I believe, against the Rams, dismantling, throttling the Rams in week four, getting a good win against Cleveland. Cleveland's beat up, but a team that a lot of people had go into the Super Bowl, unfortunately. But of course, without Cliff Kingsbury last week, they still happened to get the win against Cleveland. Is Arizona, of course, Kyler Murray? I'm gonna be a little homer with the Oklahoma ties, but at this rate, can we mention Kyler in the MVP and the only lone undefeated team left in the NFL, the Arizona Cardinals? This team is playing probably the best football of the entire league. Obviously, that's why they're undefeated, but definitely playing regardless. Is this team a caliber team that can make it to the Super Bowl, or is this kind of like a hot streak that's eventually going to cool off?
Uh, I'm Luke. I'm half and half on this situation. Going into the season, the Arizona Cardinals, looking at their schedule, especially early, I had them at 1-4. I didn't have this team really hitting on all strides like they are, and they definitely surprised me defensively, especially on the defensive end. They've got some young guys out there that are playing really good football. Um, Half of me wants to say this is a hot streak that they're hitting their stride. They've been fortunate with no major injuries. People are still trying to figure out that system and Kyle Murray's dynamic. But then the other half of me is like, look at who they've beaten. Like I mentioned, this is a tough schedule. They beat the Titans, they beat the Vikings, Jaguars. We'll chalk that up too. It is what it is. But beating the Rams on the road and then coming back and beating the Niners and then traveling on the road to the Cleveland Browns. That's a tough stretch. Just and they seem to, they dominated the Browns. They squeaked by the 49ers and they played really well against the Rams. Now you look forward into their schedule. They've got the Texans this week. That should be a win. They've got the Packers. That'll be a good test. And then they've got a few other ones sprinkled in there that I think that they can win. This could be a team that can win 10 to 11 games. My only fear for them would be just battle tested. Not their first time being in the playoffs. We all know that playoff football is definitely different. It's referee different. It's played different. There's a different atmosphere. And sometimes you got to take your lumps early on, regardless on how well you did in the regular season. Look at Lamar Jackson and learn from those mistakes and grow. So I think this is a team on a rise. I think this is a good team to look forward to in the next 2 to 3 years, especially. But this year, I'm going to have to say they'll have a great regular season, but might struggle in the playoffs.
I could see that, and of course, a lot of teams, excuse me, a lot of teams kind of get that way. And I totally agree with you in regards to the playoff experience. People don't realize that postseason football actually does play a huge role in it, whether you agree to or disagree. But it does make a difference, especially for a team like Arizona, and especially the talent that's on there. Kyler, of course, haven't been in the postseason in his early career so far, but you look at Arizona, of course. I mentioned a few times during my time on the Time to BS podcast when I'm on that show, and of course I got to give Dan a hard time, but could I'll be a little homer, but could we potentially put Kyler as, or is Aaron Rodgers probably going to run away with the league, or is it probably next year we talk more Kyler MVP?
Yeah, I definitely think he's up there. Don't forget about Lamar Jackson.
Mhm.
I think he's another solid candidate for what he's doing in Baltimore. But right now, if you gave me a vote and you told me that the season ends today, I think that you'd have to cast it for Kyle Murray just for the success that they're having, especially in a tough stretch in terms of scheduled opponents in these first 6 weeks.
Course, going from the desert, if I can talk right tonight, going from the desert to the mile high. Of course, all you listeners out there know I'm a huge Denver Bronco fan, and it's been a rough last 6 years, but nonetheless, we keep grinding. But I still like what Teddy Bridgewater brings to the team. Of course, the losses now starting to pile up. From a of course, especially from a non-biased standpoint on your side, Marty, what in the world is wrong with Denver? Besides potential, Shermer, I think he's gone at the end of the year. Vic Fangio is obviously now flirting with the pink slip at this rate, unless they can catch a hot streak here and surprise some teams. But what's gone wrong in Denver after the 3-0 start? And was it a cupcake schedule? And then they realized that the competition, they're not up to that level right now.
Yeah. I mean, they got fortunate with the 3 early games, right? Jets, Jags, Giants, all wins there. I'm an outsider. You know a lot more about the Denver Broncos, so I can only look with what I have here on the East Coast. And what I see is a team that has an identity, especially defensively. They have a head coach that's defensive minded. They have players on that side that they're trying to build around. But like everybody else in the NFL, if you don't have that quarterback to mask all the other issues that you have on all the other units, it's going to be tough. And in a division where you've got Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and I'll even throw in Derek Carr as a viable starting quarterback option. It's going to be a challenge. So, just like us over here, Washington and for Denver, they've got to solve the quarterback situation. They've yet to do that since Peyton Manning has left. And that's why you've had some dark years over there as a fan. And hopefully new general manager, George Patton, can get that square. I know John Elway was there and He tried many, many times on many, many different quarterbacks. I'm sure you don't want me to name all of them. Bring back some of those
Hey, we're
dark
catching up to
memories for you.
Cleveland on that list.
Yeah, yeah, but it's that. It's as simple as that. It's finding the quarterback. You have an identity of trying to be a defensive minded team, but I like Teddy Bridgewater just as much as the next guy, but we all know that he's not going to be the guy to lead you to the promised land.
Absolutely. And, of course, last year's or this year's draft, okay, 2021 draft, of course, they focused on defense. 2020 was what we all called speed offense, literally, drafting, of course, Jerry Judy and KJ Hamler, and the list goes on. But you look at Denver, and not to keep it too long of a topic, but and you're right, it's the quarterback position. You go from Drew Lock, obviously, he showed some flashes early in his career, and then he showed quite a bit of mistakes, and rightfully so. And of course, Bridgewater, obviously, much better play, and not saying he's perfect either, but he's not going to take us to he's not going to take us to the Lombardi. So where does Denver go from here? I really don't know. Of course, they're trying to, unfortunately, in the AFC West, that division, boy, you can score a lot of points. They took the L to Las Vegas this past weekend, and Kansas City, you just got to outscore. You got to play. What is this? A NASCAR with them, and of course Herbie out at the LA Chargers now, of course, playing phenomenal football. And that team out there, I still think is a dark horse for years to come. But they're a tough division, and hopefully they can get something going. But real quick, obviously we can't predict the future, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, devil's advocate, Fangio is out in Denver. Where does Denver go? What would their mindset be? Do they eventually go off of a offensive minded coach, or do they stick with like the last two and stick with defensive minded and hope the offense can play catch up to Kansas City?
Regardless of any, I'll put a disclaimer for you and all the folks listening, regardless of any NFL or college football head coach opening, I'm always going to put number one on the list, Lane Kiffin. So if you want Lane, I think he'd be a great fit in Denver to try to revamp that offense. But no, seriously, I think it would just all depend on what type of quarterback you get. I mean, I know they flirted with Aaron Rodgers potentially last year. If they can get a veteran quarterback that definitely has had some success in this league, you might be able to sneak a defensive minded coach on there in hopes that you can rely more on that veteran presence, a top 10 quarterback. But if you don't, I think you've got to follow the mold and draft a quarterback or get a young quarterback on a different deal or trade and bring somebody in that's going to get the most out of them. We see that in Arizona. We saw that in Cleveland with Baker even. I mean, they're getting the most out of him late last year. So you're seeing that type of success, and I think you've got to try to mimic it the best you can.
And jokes aside, and I'm with Marty on this. Obviously, we ain't predicting nothing. We understand how coaches, the rumors are that they fall real quick. But can you imagine Lane Kiffin in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, what I think Oakland had him for a few games. He
Yep.
tried that 76 yarder. Yeah, not to go too far off topic, but if Lane Kiffin doesn't take that LSU job, he's absolutely crazy. That's a perfect spot for him. But in regards to Denver Broncos, yeah, I think you're seeing a lot of young quarterbacks have success with somebody that they can mold together with, and that's what they need to find. They need to find the perfect marriage, and it's hard to do in the NFL, but if you've got it, watch out.
Going mile high to the Lone Star State, Dallas. Disclaimer. Yeah, exactly. There's no disclaimer. I can't stand the city of Dallas. I've been there many times with the wife, but I'm not a fan. Anytime Dallas loses, I'm perfectly fine. But of course, a walk-off win against New England this past week from CeeDee Lamb. Of course, Dak Prescott playing phenomenal football. Dallas is looking good for the most part. Is Dallas a team that can make a run in the playoffs, or I'm sure you're like myself? Could we see them slip up like they usually do in the playoffs and make it a quick exiting?
I'll have to pass on this one. No, no. I've always liked Dak Prescott. I liked him at Mississippi State. I liked his story. I liked the way he fought through adversity, and being at Dallas and drafted. I always thought in the back of my mind, I was like, man, this guy's going to be a good quarterback if he gets a chance, I think. And he did, and he's taken the reins and he's done great. And it's scary because we get to face him 2 times a year, and now they have offensive weapons. CD Lamb looks to be like a stud. And I think that they can be, unfortunately. I don't want to say that. Offensively, this team, you can make the argument they're the best offensive team right now in the NFL. I mean, there's definitely an argument to be made there. I think they still maybe need to shore up some things on the defensive end. They've got some individual talent, but collectively as a group, just still trying to learn and play together under new defensive coordinator Gus Bradley. But it pains me to say it, but in the NFC, if you're looking, you've got to throw Tampa Bay, Green Bay. I'll give the Cardinals, Rams, and I don't see why you wouldn't say the Cowboys are in that class too.
And I know Denver goes to Dallas sometime next month, and that'd be cool. But nothing against Dallas. They're one, so disclaimer, I will actually give props when props is due. Dallas, I think Dak was one of the probably better young quarterbacks in the league. Love the stories, especially coming out of Mississippi State. It's a bummer. His flight happened to be delayed or missed to Denver, but that's where fate comes in. But
Yep.
but nonetheless, I think Dallas is in the right. As much as I bite my tongue on this, but Dallas in the right direction. They got to work on some of that defensive line. I think this is probably one of their best offensive lines in quite a while. I mean, it still could be better, but it's not bad. And when you have an O line, unfortunately, Denver, when you don't have an O line, your quarterback is only good as they can protect him. But Zeke is playing decent football, and of course the receiving core, and especially with Lamb and Cooper, and the list goes on and on. I think Dallas was going to win some football games. I don't think, unless they get matched up well in the playoffs, presuming they make it. We'll see when it comes football time in the playoffs. But nonetheless, I think Dallas can easily be a team that can make some noise, I believe. And as much as I know it bothers both of us, they're in the right direction.
Certainly. And I want to go back to, they've always had early regular season success, historically the last few years. I mean, they did beat the Chargers early on in the season. There were some questionable calls there, but if you look at their next few games here, you're talking they beat the Cowboys, Panthers, Giants, Patriots. Like, I still feel like this team needs to get tested. When they did on the road against Tampa Bay week 1, they lost. Unfortunately for us, I don't think they're going to get a test until late November when they go to Kansas City. The 3 games prior, Vikings, your Broncos, and the Falcons. I think, even an off day for that offense, they'll still win those ball games. So still waiting to see a real true test. I thought New England was their best one so far, and they squeaked by there. And I don't think that's saying much, but I still think that they need to be tested.
Lone Star State making final trip before we head back to the university, but Cleveland, Ohio. Of course, tomorrow, Thursday night football. Cleveland, Denver has all the matchups to be just like the Jets and Denver was probably a year ago. Baker Mayfield is out. Nick Chubb is out. I don't know if Kareem Hunt's out or not, but
he is.
Yeah, so Kareem's Hunt out. The list goes on. I know that 3's out. The list, I'm currently looking at the roster. 8 is potentially listed as questionable. But beside the injuries, the season hasn't gone as planned. I got Molly, got a humongous Cleveland Brown fan. She'll be coming on the podcast at the end of the month or early November. But Cleveland fans are frustrated, and rightfully so. That I know the results haven't been there. Is it time that the Cleveland Browns start to unload some of their talent and rebuild? And what's your thoughts on Baker? Is he the franchise quarterback that they've been looking for? Is this kind of the end of the rope for him in Cleveland?
No, if it was me, I don't, he's not getting Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen money, of
Oh yeah.
course. But I mean, just 2 years ago, right? Or a little bit longer, they didn't win a game for like almost 2 seasons.
Yep.
I mean, you went 10-6, you won a few playoff games. I would think that, regardless if you think he's the answer or not, wouldn't you want to try to keep some level of success in that town?
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
he is the perfect fit for Cleveland in that offense. I think that they run through Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I think that is where they need to focus on. Maybe ship OJB or Odell Beckham out. I mean, potentially, but looking at this season, I think they've done good so far. They've had some really tough challenges. Unfortunately, like you said, the injury bugs bit them pretty hard. They've got you guys on Thursday, but then they've got back-to-back AFC North games, Steelers, Bengals. That's going to be tough to play without potentially Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So hopefully they can try to weather that storm. Got a couple chumps in there before they go back to back Ravens by Ravens. That is definitely going to tell the season right there for them. So it's just unfortunate that the injury bugs hitting them this hard. I mean, Nick Chubb has been solid and one of the best running backs in the league. So we'll see. I don't think it's time to rebuild. I think it's time to just get healthy. And, regardless of on how this season ends, you have to remember that they had that. And hopefully that fan base and that organization understands that. And I think they're good enough to compete with the pieces that they have now.
Well, absolutely valid points. Case Keenum, of course, a former Bronco, gets to start tomorrow night against Denver. So that'll be interesting. But the Brown fans, very passionate, probably one of the most passionate fan bases that probably is out there in the NFL by far. And it just amazes me. You gotta love Twitter because you can go from the highs to the lows, and a lot of Brown's Twitter. I'll just put it that way. Is very entertaining just to scroll through
Certainly.
on a Sunday afternoon.
Certainly is. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the better, more passionate fan bases that you have to give them their props. Like I mentioned earlier, they didn't win but one game in 2 seasons. And here they are 2 or 3 seasons removed from that and already trying to upgrade a quarterback who just had them 10-6 and then and a playoff win last year. I mean, they're optimistic as anything. So you've got to give them their credit on there. I mean, I'm still living on the Kirk Cousins wild card appearance 6 years ago, so it's something to definitely give props to.
And just think, Cleveland fans, you guys were just a few plays away last year from going to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
You guys are almost there. Just
Yeah.
hang.
And even this year, I mean, they should have beat the Chiefs week one. Most definitely. That would have put them at 4-5-0. They had a shootout with the Chargers that they could have arguably won too. If they could have just got one first down there in the fourth quarter. And then, the injury bug hit them. That's why the Cardinals got a good crack at them. I mean, they could have went into that game, both of them being undefeated. And it's just funny how in the NFL, the ball bounces a certain way, sometimes certain weeks, and it changes the entire narrative for not only a season, but a regime. It's insane.
Absolutely. Two quick questions. Well, this one's gonna be a simple question, and we always hear him, and a lot of people despise him, but he is one of the greatest to play. Tom Brady says he can play till he's 55. Heck, who knows? Uh,
Yeah.
could we see? I know he's 44.
Mhm.
Um, could we see him at 50 in the NFL, or he's just saying it just to kind of get some good giggles out of this?
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely a ploy. He knows what he's doing, but then again, I mean, why doubt the guy? We talked earlier, and there's a reason why there's the same quarterbacks getting in the playoffs and having success in the playoffs because playoff football, whatever anybody wants to say, that is like its own different league. And that's why you see a lot of newer teams, newer quarterbacks struggling early And then you have some folks in there that's had success, and Tom Brady's definitely one of them. So as long as he can stay healthy through a regular season, I'm not betting against that guy come January. There's absolutely no way.
Hey, like Kenny and I talked about, he may have a losing record against Denver, but regardless, that dude can win, and he knows how to win. And plus, he's got 7 rings. He can't, you
Mhm.
can't argue anything at that rate.
Certainly not.
And final question for you, Marty. A little college football. I know I've been busy work wise every other weekend, seems like, so I haven't watched too much football or college football, at least in that matter. But the Cincinnati Bearcats, the number 2 ranked team in the country. I like them. I'm not completely sold on them, but hey, they're the second ranked team in the country.
Mhm.
Uh, could they? I mean, I hate saying could because anything's possible. Do they have a legit chance of playing for a national championship if they can get by that first semifinal?
Yeah, and I think it's going to definitely depend on the draw they
Mhm.
get. If they stay at 2 or 3, I guess unfortunately for them, Alabama lost because potentially they could jump up to 3. Bama, Georgia in the SEC game, that looks like it's probably going to happen. One of them loses. I think if they pull any of those 2 teams, unfortunately, I don't see them winning that one. But there could be a scenario where they pull the Big Ten team, or they pull Oklahoma, or they pull Oregon, and I'll give them a chance against that team. But especially Georgia, that defense is absolutely insane. I think they're going to overpower just about anybody. So it's definitely a good story. It's definitely good for college football. I believe that they deserve to be there if they're undefeated by the end of the season, regardless of 1 through 4. They deserve to be one of them, and it's refreshing. So I'll definitely give them their props. I just unfortunately think if they have to go up against one of those big SEC dogs in the first round, there, it's unfortunately going to end.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the draw, especially if they get an SEC team like Georgia, I think that could really
Hmm.
probably give him a quick exit. Oklahoma team, we don't know. At least here, and I watch them close enough. I don't know what team may or may not perform the next week. So who knows? And plus, we're 0-4 in the playoffs, so we have no room to talk anyway. Um,
I will give you. I will give you this. I will give you this. You jumped on my show for the college preview. Before the season started to cover the Big 12, and you said it. I'd love to pull it and send it to you, but you said that Caleb Wilson is a better quarterback than Spencer Rattler. You didn't want to get into the topic because we were doing a quick hit interview, but you called it, and that was kind of the first time I heard that name, and I saw it last week, and I was like, man, we talked about that in our college preview show. So I got to give you live air props on that.
Hey, I appreciate it. And guys, if you haven't listened to that one, trust me, I've listened to it 3 or 4 times to see where everybody's at right now. And
Mhm.
it's a great show, not just because I was on there, but no, seriously, it's a great show. Definitely check it out.
Yeah.
That kid can play. My dad and I were just talking about him earlier over dinner at his house, and he flat said, "This kid's good." I said, "This kid's better than Spencer Rattler." And I don't know what's wrong with Spencer. Not to get off topic real quick, but
Mhm.
Spencer, but this team rallies around Caleb, and boy, this team can score points, unlike what Spencer was doing in
Yeah.
the first early part of the year. So who knows what's going to happen with Spencer?
He needs to
I'll
go to LSU with Lane Kiffin, and he needs to revive his career down there. I'm telling you, that's the perfect spot. I'm going to keep saying it until I'm going to LeVar Ball it, speak it into existence. I think that's going to be great for college football to get LSU back on track and playing down there with Georgia and Bama and all those other up and coming SEC schools. I mean, I'm just going to keep saying it and hope that happens because I think that'd be a great spot for him.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue that one. I like that. That's a team that nobody talks about. I keep hearing Arizona State. Of course, he's from Arizona, so you're gonna hear that quite a bit. But last but not least, I promise you, final question, Marty. Who do you have winning the Heisman Trophy winner this year?
Shoo. There's definitely some good names out there, like we talked about. Cincinnati quarterback Riddler. I know he doesn't get the national love, but he should definitely be up there. Of course, Bryce Young as well, for Alabama, the quarterback there. He's doing absolutely great. So I think I'd have to go with Bryce Young, quarterback Alabama. That team looks to be good. I know they had a stumble a few weeks ago against Texas A&M, but he would definitely be the popular vote. But, if I had to take somebody that I really like, would be the Cincinnati quarterback, Riddler.
Rattler can play and he can ball out. I would love to see him on Sundays, and we'll see if that chance happens or not. But I know there's college football realignment going on right now, Conference USA and the Double AC, and unfortunately, I know that's not big news, but I think college football in itself that's where we're at now is super conferences, and hey, the game's getting bigger, and that's where the money's at. So,
yep, money's driving all of that, and I'm still teetering on how I feel. Definitely wait and see. Very nervous on if the college football game traditions and bloodlines and those old school rivalries and teams playing teams, if all that stuff kind of goes to the wayside for the money, it'd be unfortunate, but that's just the way life goes sometimes.
I'm with you on that one. I still miss OU Nebraska, but the money talks, and unfortunately, it will ruin rivalries like you can't believe.
Yep. I totally agree.
Nonetheless, guys, thank you so much for listening. Marty, it was fun. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and jumping on the podcast. And as always, as I can tell everyone that comes on, you're more than welcome to come back anytime you want. Just shoot me a text like, hey, let's do this again, and I'll be glad to have you back on.
Certainly, man. I appreciate it. I had fun talking NFL football. Hopefully your Oklahoma Sooners will be in the top 4 by the end of the season, and your Broncos get an answer this offseason. So you've got some good things coming your way. So, and for the Washington football team, I guess go for anybody at this point, but Dan Snyder, sell the team.
Real quick, Marty, where can they find you at on your social media outlet?
Certainly. Again, thank you guys. Marty joins here. Intercept your lunch. We're on all podcasting platforms, but follow us on our social media to get all the updated news and sports podcasts that we drop. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at INT_your_lunch.
There you have it, of course. Excuse me, Air Raid _podcast. And don't forget to shop at lawterrain.com. Save 10% on all your watches and accessories, and use the code. There we go, Air Raid, and save 10% on all of your orders. Marty, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and let's enjoy some more football this weekend.
Certainly. Thank you.
And you've been listening to the Air Raid Attack podcast. We'll see you all next week.